G'day guys, and welcome back to another episode of the At Home Amateur Model Railway. Tonight I thought I would share another creative video with you. A few days ago I was lucky enough to be gifted a second-hand GoPro camera by my mate Mark to try and enhance the viewing quality of some of my videos and get a different perspective of my layout. So I have gone out and bought an SD card and a charger for it, so it's fully charged up. I won't lie, I've done a couple of test runs with it to see where it does and doesn't fit. So I've come up with the idea to create a camera car. So I've had a bit of a look around in the train room today, and I've come across an old Lima Coke wagon, a little bit of ply, and obviously the camera. So today's mission is to turn the Coca-Cola van into a camera van. So let's go on to that adventure together and see what we can come up with. So as I said before, through a little bit of trial and error, I've worked out where this camera will and won't fit. It is a little bit too wide to go around the layout in landscape view, so it will have to be viewed in portrait. In terms of height for portrait, sitting on a standard flat car, which is what I first tried, it is a little bit too high for most of the tunnels. I don't really want to have to go through and modify my tunnels to get the camera to fit, hence why we're going to make this camera car. So I have worked out that it needs to sit just above track height in order to run around the layout quite nicely. So we just need to find a way to get this piece of ply to fit onto the front of this rail car. So in my trusty cupboard I've got my bits and pieces box that has screws and nuts and bolts and other bits and bobs. So hopefully if I have a fossil through this, we can find something to secure this to this. I'll put the glasses on for this one. The old eyesight's not as good as it used to be. So we'll have a bit of a fossil through and see what I can find. Oh, that might do. So, looks like a M5 nut and bolt. I'll just grab it. Let's see if that fits too. This is all leftover stuff kept from IKEA kits and trains and other bits and pieces that you find around the house. Alrighty, so we've got a double nut system there so that we can clamp it through the front. I want to leave a gap between the ply and the carriage so that we actually can secure the camera to the piece of ply. So we'll start out with these and go from there. So what we need to do next is get inside this rail car. We just need to unclip the roof. So each end has a clip. Simply stretch one end out, lift the lid, and off we come. So now we have access to the end of the rail car, and one thing I have noticed is that we have a nice neat little slot at the end there of the head of the car, and what we will find is that a nut will sit quite nicely in that groove. I'm going to sit the nut directly above that bulkhead piece right there so that the front of the car is taking a little bit of the weight and it's not just solely resting on that bolt. The other thing I do like with this is the chamfer in the end of the piece of timber. Now I know that my layout does have a few imperfections, so it's not going to grab on a front corner if it does come across anything too severe. The reason for using the secondary nut across the front is that it will give us about a 3 to 4 mil gap between that buffer beam and the front of the car. The other aspect of having that secondary nut is that we can potentially change that camera viewing angle by a few degrees as well. So what my plan is, so the plan is we'll sit our nut over the top of the bulkhead. We'll drill our hole for our bolt to go through and then reciprocate that on the piece of timber. Time to put and mounting hole through the end of the rail car. Let's take our nut and sit it up against the bulkhead. We'll take our drill. I've got about a 3.5mm pilot bit here. Sit this up against a bit of ply. Alright, we should have enough of a screw mark there, and we'll push on through. Alrighty, we'll take this piece out. So here I've got a 4.5mm bit. So it must be slightly smaller than 5mm, because it is just about to go through the centre of our nut. So we'll enlarge our hole, being very careful because this plastic is not to crack it. So after a bit of a forage, I've come up with some wheels for our rail car. Now, not all wheels are created equal. As you'll see, there is quite a diameter difference between these pair of running wheels. So after a bit more of a fossick, I've at least managed to find a matching pair. We will clip these into our subframe. Now, as you'll see here, nice and free running, and this one's a little bit bound up. So we don't want our rail car dragging too much. So I'm simply going to take that wheel back out and grab, it's about a 2.5mm bit, and we're going to clean the side frame of this rail car out just a little bit. Now, yes, don't yell at me, I'm not too concerned, it's an old rail car, but all we want is some free spinning wheels. So we'll clip him back in. Still not quite enough, so we'll take a little bit more out. Little bit by little bit, you don't want to take too much out and go right through. It's not perfect, but it free runs, so that'll do me. So my next step now, that we've got our free running rail car, so grab myself a little bit of 2mm plate to give us some height between our plywood and the front of the car. I'm going to take the drill bit that we use to drill our hole, and we're simply going to make an impression on the back of the piece of wood so that we can drill through it. So that piece of plate obviously gives us our clearance just a little bit above rail height, so it doesn't touch the rails. So I'll put this back in our drill bit now. And we'll drill right through. Alrighty guys, sorry the camera wasn't rolling. So what I've just done is I've put a 10mm countersink in there, so now a bolt sits flush inside a bit of timber so that the camera sits flush to our board. So now we'll go ahead and we'll mount this onto the front of our camera car. Alrighty, so we'll take our spacer nut and we'll just simply wind that on, do him up finger tight. So I've pulled that bolt nice and cleanly in. Take our rail car, simply slide it through. So we'll wind our nut on from the back. Use our block to just, don't want to go too tight, so you don't want to break the front. And we'll just simply use the block to pull that up. So that's pulled up quite nicely. There is a little bit of lean back on that, but I'm not too concerned. So we've got our spacer nut there. We've now got our nut on the inside. Just angle this forward. And a nice free rolling camera car. So as you would have seen at the end of the last video, the rail car took a little bit of a nosedive because we've now added the extra weight to the front. For now I'm just going to put a 9-volt battery in the back to add as counterweight to the back of our rail car. Tomorrow I'll go out into the shed and I'll probably go and find some old fishing sinkers and I'll knock those into a block and simply secure those in the back of the rail car. But as you would have noticed, I've left a gap at the front, so now we can take a GoPro camera and attach the two. Now this is going to be a very, very simple and crude method, a simple rubber band. So I'm going to go around once, whoops, go around once, go around twice, and there we now have our GoPro on our rail car. So I'll just adjust this down, and again we can simply adjust that height so it's just above rail height. We'll add in our counterweight, and I've also procured a couple of old Loco tender weights, but they aren't quite enough. So we'll put the battery at the front, and a couple of our tender weights at the back. And there we have it. Camera car. Alrighty everybody, this little baby's fired up. Camera's rolling, so we'll get to see this from two perspectives, so let's give this thing a test run. Alrighty, so there you have it, the first couple of test laps with the new GoPro camera installed. Hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next time.
Coca-Cola.